Hello, I'm Simulated Irk, and welcome back to Simulated Irk Train Sim World. Today we're doing something slightly different. This looks like a New South Wales XPT. Well, it sort of kind of does. It is a high-speed train that has the original livery of the XPT when it was introduced in 1982. The carriages don't quite fit because unlike the British high-speed trains, they've got the ridged outline for the stainless steel. But let's go for a drive anyway. Off. Now we are going to why are we not going? Because I don't know how they've set me up. The reverser. Brakes on. Reverser into forward. Alright, so a bit of history for our non-Australian viewers. Now the HST, the high-speed train in the UK, a version of that was built for Australia to suit Australian conditions and Australian tracks. So, whereas the HSC was designed for 125 miles an hour, instead the Australian version, the XPT, in service can go 160 kilometres an hour, so that's 100 miles an hour. Same basic concept, the passenger carriages look different. However, the concept is similar. So if we have a look outside, that's pretty much, and I know it's loud, that's pretty much how the trailer cars looked without it being, you know, the whole outside's wrong in terms of the HST has flat sides. The HSC has flat sides, whereas the Australian cars aren't flat. So the XPT built for Australian conditions. The Australian XPT is over 40 years old now. Replacements are in the country but haven't started testing yet. So this is via the Creators Club. So I was just looking around at various people's creations. So we're just going to go for a short ride for this to Slough. So it's basically an XPT skid. So the cab, etc., looks exactly what the exactly how the HST does. Although having said that, the concept for the New South Wales cabs of the XPT is fairly similar. So the Australian version was introduced in the early 1980s, and it did create a new era of Australian passenger travel on trains. For the first time, there was just a single driver in the driver's cab, rather than the driver and assistant driver that we have today in locos, or to use the terms that they would have used back then, the driver and fireman. Train supply, brightness, headlights. There we go, so that should look a bit more. So as I said, it's not 100% accurate, but this is a skid, and so that's the main aim of it. XPT, if I show you again the outside in a moment, the door at the rear isn't the same. Overall it's a good skid. You know, making use of what is available. You can't really modify the actual train here. You can reskin it, and that's basically what's happened here. So what this episode is going to be about is basically going to be about reskinning trains to look like they're Australian. There is nothing yet that is in Train Simulator Classic. I don't think there's anything that's really Australian that isn't a reskin. Train Sim World, definitely not. There are some things on trains, but I really haven't been able to get them to work. sweet. Especially from that angle. Another thing that is different too is the number of carriages. Usually these days, depending on the service and the time of year, there's usually 4, 5, 6 passenger coaches or passenger carriages. There have been 7 in the past, but that's not really done now. So usually 4, 5 or 6, depending on the service and the time of year and how busy the trains are. But overall, it's a pretty good representation of what the XPT looked like, especially the power car, when it first came out. So I've downloaded a couple of different skins. So I'm not necessarily worried about driving them out, anything like that, being on time. I'm more worried about showing you the skin. Doing that from the outside, it is rather hard. It is rather loud. I do, probably because this was the first scheme. This was the first scheme that I really remember of the XPT from being a child. It was the first scheme they released. What they did as well ran about the same time, because it was, the new era of rail travel. That's what they were going towards. They did what's known as the candy colour scheme, which is basically what we can see. What we can see here is known as a candy colour scheme. And so, around about the same time, they were redesigning the liveries of different locomotives in New South Wales. So they'll be using the same basic colours, so a bit of red, bit of white, bit of orange, so they called it the candy scheme because a lot of them up until that point they were various shades of what was called Indian red, Tuscan, or basically brown. So they wanted to go to a new era of, to coincide with the XPT, keeping in mind that at the time the State Rail Authority of New South Wales, as they were then, also did run the freight services as well, whereas today, of course, that's very, very different. So they redid the front of suburban and interurban, as they were named then, VSATs to look the candy colours, the locomotives, and of course the XPT. They also did the road coaches that connected the XPTs into these colours as well. So I'm going to throttle back now. We're 4 miles away from Slough. So if you just do a search on, if you have TS5, go into the Creators Club, there's different versions of the train to varying standards. If you just type in HST or Model 1 XPT, you'll find there's ones if you want to play along with your own XPT. Of course, I've gone into timetable mode for Great Western Express. Miles away now. So the XPTs in New South Wales should have been replaced by now. However, the replacements have only just arrived in Australia and they haven't done any testing yet, so they're actually in the middle. I outbreak myself. So they're actually in the middle of refurbishing some of the XPT power cars, especially because they've had to last longer than expected. As far as you could drive the HSTs on Great Western Express. Throttle back. The Australian versions also did receive new engines, and they have received different engines over time. But the same basic concept of the HST applies for the XPT. So we'll just arrive here at Slough. There's our train. So overall, the power car looks pretty good, considering, of course, there are some minor technical differences, but and the doors on the coaches work totally different on the Australian versions. They swing inwards rather than outwards. They're not slam door like that. But overall, Overall, that's a pretty good representation. If you just want something that looks like an XPT, sounds like an XPT, certainly more than that exists natively for train sim. Well, we'll lock the doors, and that will be. Oh, okay. They're going to let us stop at Reading. Okay, so we're not going to do that. But I will come back shortly, hopefully, with a different version of the HST or the XPT. Alright, so we're back with a more current version of the XPT colour scheme. This is the CountryLink colour scheme, which turned into the Railcorp colour scheme. So there is an intermediate version between the Candy and this one. When New South Wales Railways become State Rail Authority, and then they divided the passenger operations into CountryLink, which you can see here, and also City Rail. This is the later version of the CountryLink style. And if you take the CountryLink logos off today, this is how the XPT basically looks today. So let's alright, so we'll go into forward. This is what this scheme, as I said, this is the, I think if you want to call it something, I think you can call this the CountryLink Mark II. So CountryLink wanted to change the image away from the State Rail Candy into different identities for each of the operators, City Rail and CountryLink. And so CountryLink became New South Wales Trains. So all they basically did was take away the CountryLink logos. There's no logos on the current XPTs. So that became the Railcorp and the New South Wales Trains XPT colour schemes without having any exterior logos, but just as to show you, something different here on Train Simulator, again, it does the job. Etc. But overall, and as I said earlier with the other version, they can't really modify the actual body. All it is a reskin. So in a lot of instances that I'll show you after this, when it comes to freight locomotives and other passenger reskins, you can only really use, if I want to call it the donor body, like and make it an approximation of what a livery looks like. Because, for instance, if you wanted to model a Tangara train in Sydney, for instance, there's nothing in Train Sim World that's equivalent to it. I did mention on a previous episode the YouTube creator Laserjet, I think his name is, where he wanted to have a Dutch version of a train, and it looked fairly similar to a German train that we've played with before, and so he's done that okay job in recreating the livery, and then he discovered that that particular train in the Netherlands is an electric multiple unit, but in Germany it looks the same, but it's actually push-pull with a loco. So I will show you, there will be a couple of other examples of trains that people have done, including using the Class 66. There are some people with Australian colour schemes that have used Class 66 as their template, so to speak. And we'll show you on this episode how that looks. So let's go outside. So the main thing, and I think that maybe like the power cars are okay. You'd really have to be that little bit more authentic to how the passenger carriages are. You'd have to change the carriages, not just use the HST model. You could actually probably use, although the scale would be out to, which is a big thing between using English rolling stock and American rolling stock, the scale would be out. Like some of the American fleet, how they've got more of a streamlined look with the ridged look rather than the flat look of the HST. Try to get trains to work, trains with a Z. Now I haven't been able to get that to work, however there is some good looking models over there where people have actually modelled and created the various locomotives and passenger trains, so it looks really realistic. Even if the tracks that they're running on, it might be a fictional recreation, but the trains look fantastic. But unfortunately, I've never got it to work on my computer. Alright, so what I might do now is I'll try and find one of the other XPTs that I have, and I'll be back in a few moments. Alright, so this is a slightly different version. I'm not sure, it might have even been done by the same person. But this is another example of the CountryLink Mark II livery. What we're going to do is get inside here, and we're going to drive it the short distance to London Paddington. We are at the old Oak Common HST depot, which, by the way, doesn't exist anymore because it's been closed and demolished to make way for High Speed Rail 2. Slow out of here because we are coming out of a depot. GWR version of the HST over there. Yep. So this is one of the things that I like about simulators. You can't do this trip in real life anymore, but you can get in your simulator and that signal's not for me. So after we take this one to Paddington, I should try and see if we can find a CountryLink Mark 1, which we may not be able to do. Depends if somebody's created it or not. should actually add a video of an XPT that I've actually shot myself to show you what they look like. So we should have one more signal before the platform. There's a 25 to come onto the platform. It was actually good to see over the last few years some repaints of the HST colours into the original colour schemes, which was awesome to see. Like the Countryman Mark 1 better, slightly. So the doors don't swing open like that on an XPT, the doors swing inwards. Overall, it's a pretty good representation of what it would actually look like. Back soon. Alrighty, welcome back. We are in Germany and we'll be driving a Talon 2. Not really representative of what the train looks like in terms of the rolling stock, but it looks okay in terms of what it actually looks like as a Queensland Rail multiple unit from Queensland. So let's get in the cab, see how we're set up, if we're set up at all. Gotta remember where everything is because they're in different locations on different trains. Oh, that's our master key. Cool. Master key, train lights on. So we've got our train lights on. We'll unlock the doors. So I think this is the latest version of what Queensland Rail's multiple units would look like on the outside. Maybe if it was me, I would have used a different train, maybe, not sure. But let's go for a quick ride anyway. We're still loading and unloading. And we'll just go for a quick ride. Did we select forward? Did we find where the reverser was? Master switch. Forward. There we go. Because sometimes you don't know how they've been set up, in what state they've been left, what state they're starting in. So we'll just go a couple of stations with this one. Now this is not how the carriages actually look in Queensland. They're all one level. This one's got a higher level and a lower level in the cab cars. But the colour scheme's pretty realistic. So this is using a German Talent 2 car carrier. Look at that. If I was me and if I had my car on that train, I'd want a fully covered. Overall, it does the job. Does the job. I'll show you another example of a train. Sometimes you do just have to make allowances. Sometimes people just call it a concept livery. We will actually see some Queensland Rail locomotives a little bit later on in this episode when I move to locos. I think I've overshot. Oh yeah. So let's have a look. Doors on the right. No, it did open the ones that I overshot. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So that's a look. That's a look at a Queensland Rail livery. A suburban train in Brisbane. The train doesn't actually look like that, but the colour scheme's pretty good. Another thing to keep in mind is that I have downloaded these via the Creators Club, but when I actually open the screen like I am now and loading a train and loading a route, it's the actual first time that I've actually seen it on tracks rather than a thumbnail. So this, well, this is a little better. It's a Class 700, but it is in the Queensland Rail colour scheme. So this would be a bit more realistic in terms of what the train actually looks like compared to the last train that we saw. Colour scheme's not bad. Next door we do have another Class 700 as well. So that actually doesn't look too bad. Okay. I don't think we've got anything set up in here either. No, master key on, reverser into forward, exterior lights, daylight, and we'll take it down to the platform because that's all we have to do. So this is overall a pretty good representation of what a modern Queensland Rail electric multiple unit actually looks like compared to the last one. There is another 700 class that I'll show you shortly. I don't know what view that is. Maybe I've zoomed. Oh, no, that's all right. But overall, that's a pretty good view, a pretty good representation of what that actually looked like. And more representative of what it would actually look like from the inside as well. Of course, it's not a carbon copy. We've got some 66 class locos that we'll be having a look at soon in various Australian colours. Oh, there's one now in Queensland Rail colours. I think some people will try and use the English because the scales are similar. Because, you know, Australian railways are based on English railways. so here we are. Hang on. So there we go. Complete a scenario using your own created livery. Well, I didn't create it, but anyway, we get the point. Next, what we're going to have a look at, we're also going to have a look at another 700 class, but this time in the Sydney Metro, or a version of the City Metro livery. Where are we? We're not going to drive the whole round anyway. But Sydney Metro is a new driverless metro that has one line in Sydney at the moment, and other metros are currently being built. It's basically the closest thing that Sydney has to the Elizabeth line or Crossrail. The new extension to the city has recently opened at the time of recording. Alright, so let's show you this. Now, it's a version of the Sydney Metro livery, same sort of thing. You know, it's the same general look. You know, it's not authentic obviously, but it looks generally like they look like, and a lot of the time you can't even see what they look like anyway because they're in tunnels and behind platform screen doors, etc. So we will go for a ride for a couple of stops. Alright, so we need to turn everything on. Open doors. We'll probably just drive it to the next station. Now this example is using third rail. Sydney Metro is overhead, but the train looks fairly similar. All right, let's get in. Let's lock our doors. Alright, stop at Stone Crossing Platform 2. Alright, we're restricted to 20 miles an hour. There's a class 465 southeastern train on both sides. And we should be able to do 50 shortly. There we go. 50 miles an hour. So it does have that similar sound You know, the UFO sound. Now, of course, the Sydney Metro cab doesn't look like this at all because they don't have a dedicated driver's cab because it is driverless. There is a manual, there are manual controls available, but just hidden under a little flap, and there's no actual dedicated driver's cab for obvious reasons, because it's meant to be a driverless train. It can be driven by a human in an emergency. R66. Alright, arriving soon at the platform. Probably come in way too hot. Brakes are good, but not that good, surely. Oh, this is looking pretty good. We're on the platform. We're on the platform at least. So that's a look at basically what a Sydney Metro train looks like according to Train Sim World as best they can do. Let's get into some locos after this. Alright, so here we are. We're using a British Rail 66 class, and this effectively looks like a Queensland Rail 3900 class, although to be fair, I think 3900 classes are actually electric, but this is a diesel. But this is basically similar to how a Queensland Rail loco would look in Train Sim World, based on a 66 class. So let's go inside, see if I can remember how to actually drive a 66. Because I'm pretty sure we're not set up for anything. Reverse the handle out. Reverse the handle. Forward. Is there a master key? That's a horn. I know the horn works. So it's not a bad representation. It wasn't necessarily the one I was looking for, but that's not bad. Alright, so we're back with another 66 class, again as a Queensland Rail 3900 class, which, as I said, I'm pretty sure was actually electric. But this is the colour scheme that they were basically delivered in. So in terms of what the colour scheme is, it looks alright. But that's just to show you what it looks like. There are another couple of versions of the 66 that I'm having some trouble finding. So we'll come back. Okie dokie, I am back to the training centre, and the reason that I'm back to the training centre...
Embarking on a new career is always exciting. Today you're joining the list of people who work on the railways, keeping the world's people and cargo running smoothly. There's a lot to learn, but you'll be taking it step by step.
Step by step and inch
Let's start by looking around. Find each of the markers and look at them.
Alright, so I was looking...
Before you get to the trains, take a quick tour of the facility here and learn the basics of moving around on foot.
Yeah. So I was looking for the class 66, and when it comes down to some of the mods, it would say class 66 TTC, but when I went to my locos, I wouldn't know what the TTC locos were because they wouldn't appear. So I had to do a Google, and I found out that the TTC is the training centre locos. So this is a class 66 TTC, standing for training centre, I presume. Which doesn't explain how to get to... No, I can't go in there. Or can I? Yes, I can. Hello, how you doing? Alright? I'm looking for a class 66 TTC. Do you know anything about that? Okay. Thank you. So how do I get to drive then a class 66 TTC is the question.
Your current objective is shown in the top left of the screen.
So it is. Yes, we know how to walk around. Okay, good.
You've just been awarded some action points. These are displayed in the top right corner of the screen and count towards your overall experience level for the game.
Okay. Okay.
This is one of the many route tasks you can discover. Keep an eye out for other tasks that will ask you to place, collect, or fix a variety of things.
No, I don't want to do that.
Head into the main building to continue your
induction.
Walk over to the waiting area on the right. Let's take a seat for a minute.
We're going to simulate waiting.
You can pause at any point to review objectives and a lot of other information about what's happening at the moment. Try it now and then return to the game after you've had a look round. Now that you've covered some of the basics of moving around and interacting with the environment, let's take a walk through the building and find the trains.
Okay.
This is Central Square. From here you can explore the main training centre depot and surrounding yards.
Alright, is this going to tell me how to find a
Your
TTC?
journey operating trains is just getting started here at the training centre. Remember, you can always come back here from the main menu to refresh your knowledge if you're unsure about anything.
Okay. How did I get a silver medal for just walking around? Did I take too long? Training Centre locomotive list. Maybe this is what I need. Alright, this must be the Training Centre locomotive list. So we're looking for the Class 66. Alright, the Class 66. Where are you? Class 66. Rightio. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to drive these other trains.
In this training module, you're going to learn to drive a diesel-electric locomotive and how the controls differ from a multiple unit.
Okay.
This is a BR Class 66 diesel-electric locomotive typically used for freight operations in the United Kingdom. In some trains, it is first necessary to insert the reverser handle. We need to do that on this one. We want to move the train forwards, so move the reverser in that direction. The train brake on the Class 66 uses a sprung lever. Holding it one way will gradually release the brakes until you release the lever. Holding it the other will gradually apply the brakes. You need to keep an eye on the two brake gauges in front of you. The larger one in the middle is the brake pipe. The outside needle shows the target pressure and the inside needle shows the actual pressure. When you apply or release the brakes, the outer needle moves and the onboard control systems will begin to adjust the brakes to match your setting. You can make a change to the brakes and focus on the road ahead while the system works to match the pressure you've set. The second gauge of note is the brake cylinder gauge, which is the second from the left. This tells you exactly what is happening with the brakes on the two sets of wheels on the locomotive. If the needles are raised to a V shape, that means they are fully applied. When the needles are both pointing directly down, the brakes on the locomotive will be fully released. You can learn more about braking systems elsewhere in the training center, but for now, you just need to remember that you are directly controlling the outer needle on the brake pipe gauge and that the end result is shown on the brake cylinder gauge.
Okay.
Keep the brake control in release until you can see the brake pipe control needle is reading 5 bar, pointing upwards. This will release the brakes fully.
All right. There we go.
Watch the brake cylinder gauge to see it gradually reduce to 0.0. Needles pointing downwards, which tells you that the brakes are now fully released on the locomotive and you can move the train. It's important to note that the brake cylinder gauge is only telling you what's happening on your locomotive. If you have wagons attached, they can take a little longer to release, so if the train doesn't move immediately, don't worry. Apply some throttle to get the train moving. As you apply power, notice the ammeter rising, the gauge on the right-hand side with the colored sections.
There we go.
This is the amount of power being fed into the traction motors. Try to keep it in the green section, only briefly in the yellow, and avoid the red section to avoid damaging your traction motors.
That's the yellow section.
Now that you've reached your target speed, you can move the throttle control back to 0. The train will then coast on level ground and the train will only slow down very gradually.
Cool. There's no engine noise. Just the occasional noise of the train going through the junction. This is well, I think I'm going to have to just complete this task. There we go, now we got some noise.
That's far enough. Bring this train to a complete stop by holding the brake control in the apply state until you see the brake pipe control needle in the center of your cab desk showing about 4 bar. The amount of braking you'll need to apply also varies depending on whether you're going uphill or downhill and how heavy your train is. Stopping a train is one of the biggest challenges of controlling it, particularly stopping it in the right place. You'll get better at this with practice.
Cool.
That concludes this module. If you wish to replay it, you can come back to it at any time via the training center.
And I think I'm going to conclude this episode and go looking to see how I can play with the various TTCs. We'll just try one thing. Return to the training center loco list. That's the last played. No, I don't know. Anywho, I've been Simulator Dirk. You've been wonderful. Thanks for watching, and ta-ta for now.